For 42 years, I cooked the Thanksgiving turkey. Every third Thursday of November, like clockwork, I would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, wrestle a 20-pound frozen bird into a sink of cold water, and spend the next 12 hours turning my kitchen into a war zone of flour, butter, and passive-aggressive comments from my mother-in-law. When my husband Arthur passed away 6 years ago, everyone assumed the turkey tradition would end. It did not. I just kept basting that bird because I thought that is what widows do. We keep the traditions alive so the rest of the family does not have to deal with the uncomfortable reality of change. But last November, I took the massive, heavy silver roasting pan out of the bottom cabinet, looked at it for about 10 seconds, and threw it right into the trash can. It made a loud, echoing crash. It was the most beautiful sound I have heard in a decade. My daughter Sarah, who is 45 and views my retirement as her own personal safety net, told me I was losing my mind. I told her I was finally finding it. If you're over 60 and this sounds familiar, don't click away. Today, I want to talk about the invisible apron. You know the one, it is the apron society ties around our waists the moment we hit a certain age, expecting us to be free babysitters, unpaid therapists, and desperate companions. When I sold our big 4-bedroom house in the Chicago suburbs and moved into this little 2-bedroom apartment, Sarah panicked. I thought she would be happy for me. Less maintenance, no more shoveling snow off the driveway, no more cleaning gutters. But her panic was not about my knees. Her panic was about her convenience. You see, a retired mother in a big suburban house is an asset. It means unlimited free childcare for my 2 teenage grandchildren. It means a place to drop off the dog when they go to Florida for spring break. When I moved to the city, I broke the unspoken contract of American motherhood, the contract that says your time belongs to your children until the very end. Sarah started dropping hints right away. Mom, you are going to be so lonely in that apartment. Mom, what are you going to do all day without a garden to tend to? What was I going to do? I was going to sleep until 8 o'clock, drink my tea while it was actually hot, and not listen to sports television blasting from the living room. It was glorious. But society, and especially our adult children, cannot stand a happily single older woman. It makes them nervous. They look at us and think, she must be miserable. Quick, let us find her a man before she realizes she does not need one. So Sarah made it her mission to get me back into the dating pool. She actually downloaded a dating application onto my cellular phone while I was in the bathroom at a restaurant. I came out and she said, Mom, I made you a profile. I used that picture of you from my wedding. You look very approachable. Approachable. Like I am a public park bench. I told her absolutely not. But then I met Richard. I did not meet him on the internet. I met him at the local public library. I was reaching for a mystery novel by Agatha Christie, and he was standing right there in the aisle. Richard was 73, a retired dental surgeon, a widower for 4 years. He had a full head of silver hair, a very nice wool coat, and he smelled like expensive shaving cream and financial stability. He asked me if I wanted to get a cup of coffee. I figured, why not? It is just coffee. For the first 2 months, it was delightful. We went to hear jazz music downtown. We went to museum exhibits. We had dinners where someone else cooked and someone else did the dishes. It felt nice to have a companion. It felt nice to have someone tell me I looked beautiful in my blue dress. When you are a woman over 65, the world kind of stops looking at you. You become invisible. You blend into the wallpaper. So when a handsome man looks at you from across a table and really sees you, it is flattering. I will admit it. My ego enjoyed the vacation. Sarah was thrilled. See, Mom, I told you. You just needed to get back out there. Now you have a partner. But right around month 3, the illusion started to crack. It started with very small things. One Tuesday morning, I was sitting right here reading the newspaper. Richard let himself in with the spare key I had foolishly given him. He walked into my kitchen, dropped a plastic bag on the counter, and sighed a very deep, theatrical sigh. I looked inside the bag. It was 3 cotton dress shirts. The dry cleaner down the street ruins the collars, he said, looking at me with those sad puppy dog eyes. My late wife, Helen, she always knew exactly how to press them with a little bit of starch. I just cannot seem to get it right. Do you think you could? He did not even finish the sentence. He did not have to. I looked at the shirts. Then I looked at him. At 71 years old, men like Richard are not looking for a lover. They are not looking for an equal partner to share the sunset of their lives. They are looking for a nurse with a purse. They are looking for a replacement for the woman who used to manage their entire existence. I ironed the shirts that day. I told myself I was just doing a favor for a friend, but that is how it starts. Does it not? You compromise one tiny boundary, and suddenly you are running a bed and breakfast for a man who thinks making a dinner reservation is a grand romantic gesture. It escalated quickly after the shirts. Richard started complaining about his joints, expecting me to research natural remedies and buy him vitamins. He started coming over for dinner 4 nights a week, and by coming over for dinner, I mean he would arrive at 6 o'clock, sit in my armchair, turn on the evening news, and wait for me to bring him a plate. I was right back where I started. I had traded the quiet peace of my new life for the privilege of watching a grown man complain about the government while I chopped onions. But the real crisis, the moment that cracked the whole facade wide open, happened during a dinner party. Richard decided, without consulting me, that he wanted to host a dinner for 3 of his old golfing buddies and their wives. 6 extra people. And he decided he wanted to host it at my apartment because, as he put it, your dining room has so much more natural light, Evelyn, and you make that incredible roast beef. I should have said no. I should have pointed him toward a catering company. But the conditioning runs deep. For decades, I was trained to be the gracious hostess, the accommodating woman who makes everything smooth and pleasant for everyone else. So, I spent $300 on groceries. I spent 2 days cleaning baseboards that were already clean. I spent the entire afternoon of the party standing over a hot stove, making a red wine reduction sauce and mashing potatoes until my shoulder ached. The guests arrived. They drank my wine. They ate my food. Richard sat at the head of my table, pouring the expensive burgundy he had brought, acting like the lord of the manor. At one point, he tapped his crystal glass with a fork to make a toast. Everyone grew quiet. He looked at me, smiling this magnanimous, benevolent smile. "I just want to raise a glass to my wonderful Evelyn," he said. My meals were so lonely, but Evelyn here, she brought the warmth back. She is the most wonderful woman. She saved me. The other guests awed and clapped politely. My daughter Sarah had stopped by to drop off a birthday gift for me. She was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching the whole scene. She beamed at me and whispered loudly, "See, Mom? Thanks to me pushing you, you have a second family. You are not alone anymore." I sat at the table, looking at my own hands. They were dry from washing dishes. There was a small burn mark on my left thumb from the oven rack. I looked at Richard, who was now explaining to his friends how hard it is to find a woman who knows how to properly baste a roast. I looked at the 6 empty plates in front of me that I would have to scrape, wash, and put away. I looked at Sarah, who was smiling because my perceived happiness meant she did not have to feel guilty about living her own life. And in that exact moment, a very sharp, very cold realization hit me. They did not see me. None of them saw me. Richard saw a housekeeper, a cook, and an emotional crutch to prop up his twilight years. Sarah saw a problem solved. A mother safely boxed away into a relationship so she would not become a burden. The silence in my head was deafening. I realized I had spent my entire adult life living in a 4-bedroom house, cooking for a half-dozen people every single day. I realized that the greatest emptiness you will ever experience is not when your house is empty. The greatest emptiness is when your house is packed full of people and not a single one of them knows who you really are. I did not scream. I did not throw a plate. I am a Midwestern woman. We do not do dramatics at dinner parties. I simply stood up. I untied the apron from around my waist. I folded it neatly and placed it right in the center of the table, next to the gravy boat. Richard stopped talking mid-sentence. "Evelyn, darling, is everything all right? Are we having dessert soon?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No, Richard, we are not having dessert. In fact, I think it is time for everyone to go home." You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. One of the wives nervously clutched her napkin. Richard chuckled, trying to play it off as a joke. "Evelyn, what are you talking about? The evening is young." "I am talking about the fact that I am tired," I said, my voice incredibly calm. "I am tired of cooking. I am tired of ironing shirts that do not belong to me. And I am tired of pretending that this is what I want out of the rest of my life." I walked over to the closet, grabbed Richard's expensive wool coat, and handed it to him. "Thank you for the compliment, Richard," I said. "But I am not an emergency rescue vehicle for lonely men. You need a maid, a therapist, and a chef. You can hire all 3, but you cannot date them for free under the guise of companionship." It was brutal. I know it was. But at 71, I no longer have the luxury of softening my truth to protect someone else's fragile ego. Richard was furious. He called me ungrateful. He said I would die a lonely, bitter old woman. His friends practically sprinted out the door, terrified of the awkwardness. When they were all gone, Sarah turned to me, completely horrified. "Mom, what is wrong with you? You just humiliated a perfectly good man. He has money. He treats you well. Do you know how hard it is to find a good man at your age?" I poured myself a fresh glass of wine, walked over to my sofa, and sat down. I looked at my daughter, the child I had sacrificed so much for, the child who was now furious that I was refusing to sacrifice the final chapter of my life. "Sarah," I said, "listen to me very carefully. You are terrified of me being lonely. But what you do not understand is that putting me in the hands of a man who just wants to use me as a convenience is not saving me from loneliness. It is just a way for you to buy peace of mind." She started to argue, but I put my hand up. "I love you. I will always be your mother, but my time is finally my own. I am not a free babysitter. I am not a backup plan when your kids get sick and you have a meeting. If you need me to watch the kids, you ask me 3 days in advance. If I say no, you respect it. And do not ever, ever sign me up for a dating application again. She left in a huff. She did not speak to me for a week. It has been 6 months since that night. I have not seen Richard again. I heard through the grapevine that he is now dating a 62-year-old widow who loves to bake pies. Good for him. I sincerely hope she enjoys making crust from scratch. As for me, I am living alone. And let me tell you a secret that society does not want women our age to know. Living alone is magnificent. I wake up when the sun comes up. I make a single cup of coffee, exactly how strong I like it. I sit on my balcony and watch the city wake up. Sometimes I listen to classical music. Sometimes I just listen to the traffic. I do not compromise on what television shows I watch. I do not pick up wet towels that belong to someone else. I do not explain my schedule to anybody. People call women like me selfish. They say we are rigid, set in our ways, unwilling to compromise. But think about the word selfish for a moment. For 50 years, my entire existence was defined by what I could do for other people. I was a wife, a mother, a neighborhood volunteer, a hostess. I was a mirror, reflecting everyone else's needs back to them. When do I get to be the person standing in front of the mirror? At 71 years old, if you do not learn how to be a little bit selfish, people will take the very last drops of your energy and use it to water their own gardens. They will use the remnants of your life to light their own paths, and you will be left sitting in the dark, wondering where your time went. The difference between having a companion and being a servant is so incredibly thin. Many women of my generation have spent their entire lives walking that thin line, and it takes us losing our spouses and finding ourselves alone to realize we have been wearing an invisible apron our entire lives. Taking off that apron is the hardest thing you will ever do. It feels unnatural. You will feel guilty. Your kids will guilt trip you. Your friends might judge you. But the peace you find on the other side, it is worth every single uncomfortable conversation. I am not saying romance is dead. I am not saying you should never date again. If you find someone who looks at you as an equal, who respects your boundaries, and who knows how to operate his own washing machine, then by all means, enjoy it. But do not ever settle for being someone's retirement plan. Do not trade your hard-earned freedom for the illusion of companionship. Do not let the fear of being alone push you into a crowded room where nobody knows your name. My name is Evelyn. I am 71 years old. I am single. I am unapologetic, and I am keeping the fire of my life entirely for myself. I want to hear from you now. Have you ever felt the pressure to date just to please your family? Have you ever had to draw a hard line with your adult children about your time? Go down into the comments section right now and tell me your story. Let us build a community where we stop apologizing for choosing our own peace. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, please share it with a friend who might need to hear it. Stay strong, stay selfish, and I will see you in the next video.